Hello and welcome to Lantern Lane Stories. Tonight's story is Big Ben, the bell that spoke to the world. My name is Big Ben, but here is a secret. I'm not a tower, I'm a bell, a very, very large bell. I live inside a tall tower beside the River Thames in London. The tower has a gold clock face on each of its four sides. It stands 96 meters tall. That is about as high as 30 houses stacked on top of each other. The tower has its own name. It is called Elizabeth Tower. It received that name in 2012 to celebrate Queen Elizabeth II's 60 years on the throne. But I was here long before that. My story begins in 1858 in a noisy foundry far from London. Workers poured hot liquid metal into a giant iron mold. The air smelled of smoke and scorched metal. Everything was very loud. They were making me. I weigh 13.5 tons. That is heavier than 2 adult elephants standing side by side. When the workers tried to lift me into the tower for the first time, I cracked. I broke before I had ever rung even once. The workers had to melt me down and start all over again. Finally, on the 11th of July, 1859, I was hoisted up into the belfry. The belfry is the high room at the top of the tower where bells live. I rang for the first time, bong. The sound rolled out over London. It crossed the Thames. It floated past the market stalls and the bread shops and the children playing in the muddy streets. A woman washing her windows looked up. A boy eating a bun paused mid-bite. I can hear it all the way from here, he whispered. London had a voice, and that voice was mine. Every 15 minutes, I sing. Not the same note over and over. I play a melody, 4 gentle notes, like a tiny tune. It is called the Westminster Quarters, and it was written long before I was born. Ding, dong, ding. Dong then. On the hour, I strike the big note. 1 bong for 1 o'clock, 2 bongs for 2 o'clock, all the way to 12 at midnight. My note is an E1, deep round E. If you sit at a piano and press the E key softly, you will hear a tiny whisper of what I sound like. Now imagine that sound as big as a ship, as low as a cave, as wide as the whole city. That is my voice. For many years, the people of London set their watches by me. A delivery man on his bicycle would tilt his head and listen. 5 o'clock, he would say, time to go home. A baker counting loaves would look up from her table. 3 o'clock, another batch needs to go in. I was their clock, their heartbeat, their steady reminder that time moves on slow and sure, like the tide below. Then something wonderful happened. In 1923, a company called the BBC began to send voices through the radio. Radio was a miracle in those days. People could hear sounds coming out of a small wooden box, voices from far away, music from concert halls they had never visited. On the last evening of 1923, New Year's Eve, the BBC held their microphone outside near my tower, and they broadcast my chimes across Britain. In cottages in Scotland, in narrow terraced houses in Manchester, in fishing villages in Cornwall. Families bent their heads close to their wireless sets. They heard me. A little girl in Wales pressed her ear to the warm side of the radio. "Mummy," she said, "is that really the same bell from London?" "Yes, love," her mother said softly, "all the way from London right into our house." The BBC made this a nightly tradition. Every evening, the announcer would say, "And here is the chime of Big Ben," and then I would ring. But then came the 1940s. War spread across Europe like a cold gray fog. Country after country fell under German occupation. France, the Netherlands, Belgium, Poland, Denmark. In those occupied countries, radios became precious things. Sometimes listening to the BBC was forbidden, sometimes it was dangerous, but still people listened. At night, families huddled together in dark kitchens. Curtains pulled tightly shut, the volume turned very low. They tuned to the BBC and they heard me bong. A man in a cold kitchen in Paris would close his eyes and nod slowly. "Britain is still there," he would say quietly. "Still," his wife would whisper. "Still," he would answer. I did not know it then. Bells do not know such things. But I was carrying something important across the sea every night. Not just sound, hope. A woman in Amsterdam wrote in her diary, "I heard Big Ben again tonight. It felt like someone had left a candle burning in a distant window, just for us. I rang through all 5 years of the war, through the long winters, through the cold and the dark." When the war finally ended, people danced in the streets of London. They hugged strangers. They cried. And somewhere in a city far across the sea, a family switched off their radio for the very last time and sat quietly, not from sadness, but from relief. I'm very old now, 160 years old. In 2017, the workers came back. The tower needed mending. The clock needed fixing. I had a small crack, not dangerous but enough to worry about. Scaffolding went up all around the tower. Workmen moved in with their tools and dust sheets. The air smelled of old stone and fresh paint on the 21st of August, 2017. I fell silent. For the first time in many generations, London had no bong. People were surprised by how much they missed it. A taxi driver shook his head. I never really noticed it before, but now it's gone. Something feels wrong. A woman on her morning walk stopped at the corner where she usually heard me. She listened. "Nothing, just traffic, pigeons, wind off the water. It's too quiet," she said. "For 4 years, I slept." The workers repaired the cracks. They repainted the clock hands gold. They replaced worn parts that had been grinding quietly since 1859. Then, on the 27th of January 2021, I woke up. The scaffolding came down. The gold clock face gleamed and I rang bong. Just once to begin again. But people on the bridge stopped walking and looked up. A child pressed her nose to the car window. "Mummy, what was that?" "That," said her mother, "is Big Ben, the famous bell. It has been asleep for 4 years, and now it is awake again." The child thought about this like me, she said. After a really long nap, her mother laughed. "Exactly like you after a really long nap." And now tonight, I am still here. The Thames is wide and still below my tower. The dark water catching the orange bridge lights. A bus rumbles across the stone arches. A swan drifts silently underneath. Every 15 minutes, I sing my 4 notes. Ding, dong, ding, dong. Every hour, I count the time. Bong, 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 bong. My note is always E, always the same, always clear and true. Somewhere tonight, a family far away is watching a video about London, and they hear me ring in the background. "Is that Big Ben?" a child asks. "Yes," says a grandfather. That sound has traveled all over the world. Somewhere, a very old woman remembers a winter night long ago. Her mother held her close beside a warm radio. They heard me ring through the dark and felt less alone. Somewhere in London, a child is falling asleep right now. The last thing she hears before her eyes close is one deep, clear E rising up from the river. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11, hush. And so London also slowly fell asleep. Good night.